Exhausting you the most right now isn't actually your workload,
Right.
but rather it's this kind of invisible timeline you've trapped yourself in. I mean, you know that feeling. You wake up, maybe it's a Monday morning, or maybe it just really feels like a Monday.
Oh, I know that feeling well, that heavy gravity.
Exactly. You're just staring at the ceiling, and before your feet have even hit the floor, you're already calculating everything you're behind on.
The deficit.
Right, the deficit.
Yeah.
Every unread email, every expectation you haven't quite met, goals that feel like they're slipping away,
Mm-hmm.
and it all just sits right there on your chest. Energetically speaking, you're waking up fundamentally in debt.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a completely paralyzing way to start a day.
It really is.
Because that sensation of being um, behind schedule on your own life, it creates a massive cognitive load. Your brain is essentially running this huge background process, constantly crunching the numbers on your perceived failures.
Which just drains the battery.
Exactly. It drains the battery before you've even attempted to face the present moment.
Well, that profound sense of dread is exactly what we are dismantling today.
I love that.
So if you are listening to this right now and feeling that specific weight, consider this deep dive a total reset button. Because we have a really fascinating piece of source material in front of us today.
We do.
It's a document called the Chillstar Brand, Bible, and Content Guide. And yeah, it's an internal blueprint, but the overarching mission is completely universal.
Totally.
It's entirely focused on taking that day of dread and transforming it into a day of power. The guide actually calls this granting yourself the permission to begin again.
That phrase alone is just so powerful.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. How does this document actually map out a route from, that morning paralysis to genuine emotional sovereignty?
Well, the foundational argument of the text is that to break those negative loops, you have to fundamentally change the identity you are operating from.
The identity, not just the habits.
Right. Exactly. So often we approach our exhaustion by trying to change our schedules or we tweak our task lists. We try to life hack our way out of burnout.
Totally guilty of that.
Same. But the guide suggests that the root of the problem isn't what we're doing, it's who we believe we have to be while doing it.
Wow.
It validates that your feelings of overwhelm are entirely real, right? But it firmly rejects the premise that ambition requires you to live in this state of constant low-grade panic.
Which brings us to the core concept of the Chillstar. And I find this fascinating because it attacks a binary that most of us just, accept as a law of physics.
The ambitious versus peaceful binary.
Right. We culturally assume that if you are high-achieving and ambitious, you're inherently stressed, heavily caffeinated, and just anxious all the time.
Burning the candle at both ends.
Exactly. And conversely, if you are deeply at peace, well, you must be devoid of ambition. You're sitting on a beach somewhere, totally unbothered by growth or metrics. But the text defines a chill star as someone who completely shatters that binary.
That's the crux of it. And the guide uses this really striking piece of imagery to describe the synthesis. It says, this identity requires having the fire of a star existing simultaneously with the coolness of the night sky.
The fire of a star and the coolness of the night sky, I mean, that's not just poetic. It's pointing to a very specific neurological balance, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, the fire of a star is your drive. It's that ambition, the relentless pursuit of your potential, right? The refusal to settle for mediocrity.
Right.
But historically, we fuel that fire with cortisol and adrenaline. We use the fear of failure as our combustion engine.
Which is exhausting.
So exhausting. So the coolness of the night sky represents a total shift in fuel sources.
Okay, how so?
It's the ability to remain intensely present, grounded, and just undisturbed by external chaos, even while you are burning bright and striving for massive goals. You're replacing frantic survival mode energy with this calm, deliberate power.
But, making that shift from frantic ambition to grounded ambition, that requires dealing with the baggage we already have.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're listening right now and feeling stuck, you probably don't feel like a star. You feel like a computer running on a totally corrupted operating system.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Your CPU is maxed out at like 90% because you have dozens of background applications running. And every single one of those apps is a past regret.
Yeah.
A project that tanked, a conversation where you lost your temper, an opportunity you just slept on. You're trying to build a new future, but your system keeps crashing because it's so busy processing history.
Right.
So how does the text suggest we actually force quit those applications?
What's fascinating here is that it starts by addressing how we internalize those events. The guide points out this subtle but really dangerous linguistic shift we all make.
What kind of shift?
Well, we go from experiencing an event like saying, I made a mistake, to internalizing it as an identity. We say, I am my mistakes.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
And that heavy cognitive load you just described, it isn't just memory, it's identity.
that makes so much sense.
So to clear that CPU, the text demands an immediate identity shift from I am my mistakes to I am the architect of my future.
That distinction is just crucial. It separates the data from the emotion.
Mm.
And there's a specific line in the source material that really anchors this. It says, your past is a place of reference, not a place of residence.
I mean, it's an incredibly potent framework.
It's brilliant because it solves the problem of toxic positivity. It doesn't tell you to pretend your past didn't happen.
No,
You should look
actually.
back at it. You should reference it. I
Yeah.
mean, you need the data from that failed project or that bad relationship to make better decisions tomorrow. It validates your history,
Yeah.
but it challenges your emotional attachment to it.
Exactly. You extract the lesson, but you don't, pitch a tent in the shame.
Right.
And the candor of that rule is what gives it so much power. You are not allowed to live there. Because when you reside in your past, you're leaking all of your current present moment energy into a timeline that doesn't even exist anymore.
Which is a huge waste.
You cannot be the architect of your future if all your building materials are being shipped to a ghost town.
Wow. Okay, which actually brings up the critical issue of resource management.
Yes.
Because if we are cutting ties with the past to reclaim our energy, we definitely need a way to protect that energy moving forward. I mean, it's one thing to stop looking backward, but the present moment is filled with its own chaos.
Always.
And this is where the guide introduces its mechanism for defense. It relies heavily on ancient Stoic philosophy to build what it calls the Stoic fortress.
Yeah, and the foundation of that fortress is a principle called the dichotomy of control. It's basically the ultimate boundary-setting exercise for your own psyche.
Okay, break that down for us.
The concept is brutally simple. You aggressively divide the world into things you can control and things you cannot. And then you completely withdraw your emotional capital from the latter.
Right. And when we really look at it, the list of things we can actually control is uncomfortably short.
It is very short.
It's our own thoughts, our own interpretations, and our own actions. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
The economy, the mood of our boss, the traffic on the commute, the algorithm constantly changing and hiding our content, all of that is entirely outside our control.
Exactly. And the guy argues that when we obsess over those external variables, we are just bleeding out energy that we desperately need for our own growth.
So it's an energy leak.
Big time. From a psychological standpoint, this is about shifting your locus of control. When your locus of control is external, meaning you believe your emotional state is dictated by outside events, you are inherently a victim of circumstance.
Because you're at the mercy of the weather, basically.
Right. You will always be exhausted because you're trying to manage variables you have absolutely no access to. But the Stoic fortress pulls that locus of control inward. You are drawing a hard line in the sand and saying, I refuse to invest my sanity into a stock I do not own.
Okay, I am entirely on board with the dichotomy of control. It makes logical, operational sense. But, and I have to push back here, there's another Stoic concept the guide introduces right after this. And if I'm listening to this right now, trying to get my Monday on track, this next concept might sound a little disconnected from reality.
Okay, let's hear the friction point.
So the concept is amor fati, which the text translates as loving your fate.
Yes.
Now, I understand radical acceptance, I get that, but loving it.
It's a strong word.
It is. Imagine you're the listener right now. You've been working on a massive project for 6 months. You come into the office on Monday, and management announces a sudden pivot. Your project is scrapped. It's just dead.
Devastating.
Right. Are you telling me the strategy here is to stand in the middle of the office and love the fact that 6 months of your life just evaporated? How is that not just gaslighting yourself?
I completely get that. That is the exact visceral reaction most people have to amor fati. It feels like a demand for emotional delusion.
It really does.
But if we dig into the actual mechanics of emotional sovereignty, amor fati is not about affection. It is not about forcing a fake smile and pretending that having your project scrapped feels wonderful.
Then what is it actually asking of us? Because, love implies a positive emotional embrace.
Think of love in this context as an absolute unconditional embrace of reality,
Right.
primarily to eliminate the friction of denial.
The friction. Okay.
Because the source of your suffering in that office isn't just that the project was scrapped. The project being scrapped is a material, neutral fact. The suffering comes from the resistance to that fact.
Ah, I see.
It's the internal monologue screaming, this shouldn't be happening, it isn't fair, they can't do this. That resistance generates a massive allostatic load on your nervous system.
So resistance drains the exact energy you need to figure out what to do next.
Exactly. Cursing the management team doesn't resurrect the project. Amor fati means accepting reality so completely and with such zero resistance that you immediately absorb the event and use it as fuel. You look at the scrapped project and say, okay, this is the reality I have been handed. I will not fight the math of what has already happened. How do I leverage this exact scenario to my advantage?
So it's an aggressive pivot from why is this happening to me to what is this doing for me?
Yeah, precisely. And to make that pivot possible, the guide pairs amor fati with two other psychological tools. The first is premeditatio malorum, which is the premeditation of evils. This is the practice of actively anticipating obstacles before they even arrive.
So anticipating the chaos so your nervous system isn't shocked by it when it happens.
Right. If you walk into your Monday expecting a perfect, frictionless existence where everyone agrees with you and you hit every green light, the slightest disruption will trigger a threat response in your brain.
You'll panic.
You will panic. But if you mentally rehearse the day and acknowledge variables will inevitably go wrong because that is the nature of complex systems,
Right.
then a canceled project or a sudden crisis isn't a catastrophe.
It's just an expected data point.
Exactly. You stay chill because you already budgeted for the friction.
It's like installing shock absorbers on a vehicle. The pothole in the road still exists, and you're still going to hit it, but it doesn't shatter the axle. You just absorb the kinetic energy and keep moving forward.
That's a great way to put it, which perfectly sets up the final defensive principle. The obstacle is the way.
Oh, I love this one.
It reframes the entire concept of a roadblock. Whatever is standing in your way doesn't halt your journey. It literally becomes the journey.
Right.
So that scrapped project isn't keeping you from your career path. Dealing with the fallout, managing your composure, and finding a brilliant pivot. That is your career path in that exact moment.
That changes the entire paradigm.
It really does.
And, if the Stoic fortress is our defense, like how we stop the energy from leaking out when reality hits us,
yeah.
then the next phase of the guide is how we play offense.
Yes.
Because once we've accepted the obstacle, how do we actively extract value from it? And the text refers to this offensive strategy as gold hunting.
Gold hunting is the active, relentless practice of finding the utility in the negative.
Right. And when I read this section, a very specific analogy came to mind because we really have to separate this from the kind of toxic positivity that just tells people to look on the bright side when things are terrible.
Oh, absolutely.
So imagine a setback, a financial hit, a public failure, a brutal Monday as standing knee-deep in a freezing, muddy river.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Toxic positivity is standing in that freezing water, shivering and shouting, "What a beautiful, crystal clear hot spring. I love how warm it is."
Right.
It's pure denial. And as we discussed, denial fractures your psyche.
Yeah, it creates a massive cognitive dissonance. Your brain knows you're lying to it.
Right. But the gold hunting mindset operates completely differently in that same muddy river. You are still standing in the freezing water. You fully acknowledge that it is cold. You fully acknowledge that the mud is gross. But you are standing there with a pan, aggressively sifting through the dirt, because you know with absolute certainty that there's a valuable gold nugget hidden somewhere in the mess. You aren't ignoring the reality of the mud. You are actively exploiting the mud to find the gold.
I mean, that analogy perfectly captures the mechanism at play here, and the guide outlines a specific ritual for the modern Chillstar to do this.
Okay, what is it?
When that failure hits, when you are standing in the freezing river, you are trained to ask one literal, direct question out loud. Where is the gold in this?
Out loud, though. Why out loud? And why that specific phrasing?
Because of how the brain processes information, specifically through a network called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS, okay.
Your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of information every second. The RAS acts as a bouncer. It only lets in the information that matches your internal programming, or what you tell it is important.
So it's essentially a biological search engine.
It is a highly efficient search engine. If your internal programming is, why does my life always fall apart? Your RAS will immediately filter your environment to find every piece of evidence confirming that you are a victim.
It'll just highlight the cold water in the mud.
Exactly. But when you ask the literal question, where is the gold in this situation? You give the search engine a new query.
Wow.
You force your brain to bypass the threat response and initiate a search for solutions, lessons, and hidden advantages.
That is fascinating. You are essentially hacking your own confirmation bias.
You really are.
So, returning to our listener who just had their 6-month project scrapped, the mud is the wasted time, the blow to the ego, the frustration. But they ask the question, where's the gold?
Right.
And suddenly, the brain has to find an answer. I mean, maybe the gold is realizing that the project management system they built to handle the work is incredibly valuable and can just be sold to another department.
Yes.
Or maybe the gold is learning a really harsh, necessary lesson about securing executive buy-in earlier in the process.
Exactly. You extract the wisdom, the gold, and you leave the suffering, the mud behind.
Love power. Okay?
And over time, practicing this actually changes your neuroplasticity. You stop seeing a world full of threats and you start seeing a world full of raw materials.
I love that.
But this raises an important question. Maintaining this mindset, keeping the RAS programmed correctly, it requires constant reinforcement. You can't just read about this once and expect your brain to rewire itself permanently.
No, of course not. Which naturally leads us to the culmination of the guide.
Right.
So what does this all mean? We've mapped out the journey. We started by claiming the Chillstar identity, holding that intense starlight ambition while remaining deeply grounded in the coolness of peace.
The balance.
We built a stoic fortress by pulling our locus of control inward and treating our past as a reference library, not a permanent residence.
Yeah.
And we've learned how to aggressively pan for gold in the freezing rivers of our daily setbacks. But how do we lock this in? How do we make sure the listener doesn't just, feel inspired for 10 minutes and then immediately lose it when their inbox pings?
Well, the guide's final instruction is a practice called speaking life. This is the anchor.
Speaking life.
The text emphasizes that cognitive understanding just isn't enough. You have to utilize auditory feedback loops. You have to verbalize the identity.
So it has to be spoken.
Yes. When you speak affirmations loud, you're forcing your brain to process the thought, articulate it, and then hear it back. It creates a closed loop of reinforcement that firmly anchors the new identity into your nervous system.
So it's basically tuning the frequency of your internal monologue manually rather than letting the outside world tune it for you.
Exactly. And the source material provides a very specific script for this called the Chillstar Creed.
All right.
It's designed to be a definitive psychological reset. So to the listener right now, whether you are commuting in traffic or walking your dog or still staring at the ceiling trying to find the willpower to start this Monday, I want you to just let these words wash over you. Treat this as your permission to begin again right in this exact second.
Let's hear it.
I am grounded in peace. I am reaching for my stars. I release what was. I embrace what is becoming.
Wow. I release what was. I embrace what is becoming. I mean, it fundamentally dissolves the illusion of being behind.
It really does.
Because you can't be behind schedule if you have completely released the past and are exclusively focused on the single step required for what you are becoming. It just brings all of your scattered energy right back into the present moment.
You reclaim your sovereignty. You are no longer in debt to yesterday.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to carry into the rest of your day. We started by talking about the heavy gravity of dread. That looming task, that difficult conversation, or that massive project that is making you want to just pull the covers back over your head.
Yeah.
But if what we've unpacked today is true, if the obstacle truly is the way, and if your brain is now actively primed to hunt for gold, what if the very thing you are dreading the most today isn't a roadblock at all? What if that heavy, muddy, frustrating challenge sitting in front of you is actually the exact raw material you've been waiting for to build the future you've been dreaming of?
The gold is in the river. You just have to step in and sift for it.
So take a deep breath, clear the background apps, and go build your fortress.